Hello, my name is Sun Park, and I'm going to introduce a paper. The title is Turnover in Open Source Projects. I'm going to start with the introduction, and I'm going to show you some research results, and I'm going to finish with a conclusion. In order to know whether open source projects are performing well, researchers have studied the ability of these projects to both attract and retain contributors, and consequently their turnover. In this context, the turnover means the exit of some contributors and the entry of others. However, in most studies, most contributors accounted for turnover in open source projects are not active, and they usually make one or two contributions per year, which can lead to inaccurate results. So, and also they investigate the turnover in a relatively short period. But in this paper, the authors compute the turnover of 174 open source projects for each year between 2015 and 2018, considering only core developers. They analyzed how the CDT rate, core developer turnover rate, can influence the actionability of these projects, considering the time to fix bugs and issues and the time to implement enhancements. They selected the top 50 projects, most popular projects on GitHub for each language, so the total of 250 projects, and then they applied some steps to discard projects from this initial selection, and they ended up with 174 open source projects. They have 4 research questions. The first one is how common is core developer turnover in open source projects? And the second one is about the impact of team size and programming language and project owner on CDT rate. And the third one is how stable are open source projects regarding their CDT rate. And the fourth one is, does the core developers turnover impact the issue resolution time? In the first question, we have 3 concepts: newcomers rate, leavers rate, and the CDT rate. Core developers, newcomers, they are contributors who are not core members in the previous year, but who became core developers in the next year. And core developers, leavers, they are contributors who were core member in a previous year, but they did not contribute enough to remain as core developer in the next year. And the CDT rate. To calculate the CDT rate for nth year, they took the number of core developers in a certain year and the number of core developers in the next year to compute the average number of core developers. Then they divide the number of core developers in the nth year by the average. To answer these research questions, the authors calculated annual developer turnover rate, which is CDT rate, between 2015 and 2018. As we can observe, most projects present a turnover rate between 30% up to 70%. And according to US Bureau, the average employee turnover rate in the US is approximately 12% to 15%. In contrast, we can observe that the annual core developers rate in open source projects is substantially higher. And the authors assume that this is because of the characteristics of open source projects, which is developers can leave anytime for any reason. And the second question about the impact of team size and programming language and project owner. And the first one, CDT rate by team size. For this question, The authors organized the projects according to team size, small teams, medium teams, and large teams. Small teams have less than 10 core developers, and medium team has more than 10 and less than 20 core developers, and large teams have more than 20 developers. And we can observe higher turnover rates for larger teams, so the probability of a core developer to join or leave a project increases along with the team sizes. And the second one is CDT rate by project owner. The box plots show a clear difference between organization and user projects. The CDT rate for organization projects is 36%, whereas user projects are 25%, considering the median values difference. A possible reason for this difference is that developers who work for projects owned by organizations can be paid for their work, which is not common in projects owned by individual users. So that is, the motivation to contribute may cease when the developer no longer receives money for it. And the authors also evaluate the distribution of CDT rate for 5 selected programming language, but it turned out there is no significant difference concerning programming language with the exception for Ruby. And the next one is CDT rate by age. The authors analyzed this question with projects with at least 5 years old, 5 years history. So they organized projects into 4 groups. Group 1 is younger than 7 years, and group 2 is between 7 to 8 years old, and group 3 is between 9 to 10 years old, and group 4 is older than 10 years old. We can see the increase in CDT rates for older projects. In other words, the probability of core developer entering or leave a project increases along with the project's age. And the next one is how stable are open source projects regarding CDT rate. To answer this question, the authors classify the project into 4 turnover status groups: attractive, unattractive, stable, and unstable. Stable groups have low number of newcomers and leavers, and attractive groups have low number of leavers and high newcomers. Unattractive groups have high number of leavers but low newcomers, and unstable group has high number of leavers and newcomers. As we can see through the chart, attractive and unattractive projects represent approximately 10 and 12% respectively. On the other hand, most of the studied projects are classified as unstable and stable. And the next one is, does the CDT rate impact the issue resolution time? In this analysis, they collected all solved issues, including issues labeled as bug and enhancements for each project, which means they did not select a particular type issue in this analysis. As we can see, there is a significant difference only for unstable projects. The median value for this group was 66 days. The next one is only for bugs. The author selected all solved issues labeled as bugs, and as we can observe, attractive projects tend to fix bugs faster than others. But on the other hand, unstable projects take substantially more time to fix bugs. The authors also conducted a study to find out the average time for solving enhancement issues. Although the median time to conclude issues for attractive projects take a substantially shorter time compared to unstable projects, the number of attractive projects was very low, so they could not obtain a substantially significant difference there. The authors finished their paper with 4 main points. First one is core developers turnover, which is CDT rate, is a core developers turnover is a frequent event in open source projects, and it tends to be higher in Ruby projects. And projects owned by organizations have a higher core developer turnover, CDT rate, than projects owned by individual users. And core developers turnover increases for large teams, and attractive projects tends to fix bugs faster, while unstable projects take a significantly longer time to fix them. It was around twice in number of days. So this is the last page of my presentation, and I was really excited to see the result of their study, but I was a little disappointed because it was not really different than I expected. And also, if the authors presented some research data from the other studies, then I think we could have compared the results, and it would have been really interesting, I think. So thank you for watching, and see you next time.